What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TW Motorsports, and today something you guys have been dying to see. A lot of people have been asking about it. We are going to take the gray daily driver Silverado to the ground. Yes, I'm going to lower it like I do everything in the shop. This will be no different. So we recently finished up the interior, and guys, I am absolutely loving it. That new carpet, the new headliner, it's just all, I absolutely love it. I've been driving it. It's actually dirty again, but today, I've had these parts around for a while. I want to go ahead and do it. Now I'm going to try to get it all in one video. If I can't, I may break it up because it's going to be a lot of stuff. As a matter of fact, those are all the boxes. Some of them are broke down, some of them aren't, for the parts I'm going to be installing, and they are actually right here. So several people have asked this and continue to ask, you know, what kit to use. I really don't use a kit, guys. I generally buy my parts individual because I like different parts for different reasons. So I will be listing everything that I'm using here today in this video in the description of this video down below. So if you guys are looking to do something like this, that will give you the stuff that you need, the links that you need, if you want to do the exact same thing. But what I'm planning on doing here is I'm planning on doing a 4.6, possibly a 4.7. We will just have to see. I'm not going to do a 4.8. Generally on a 4.8, these trucks set a little lower in the back, and I don't like that look. I'm more of a, I want a little bit of a rake, but I want it towards the front, so I want the back about a ½ inch higher. When it's completely level, it looks actually lower in the back, and I don't care for that look. I know some of you guys like that, but I am not that guy. So what we are using, so I've got new lowers, new uppers. Now the reason I chose to do this, guys, is chances are the ball joints, this is a 200,000 mile truck, chances are the ball joints are shot. And I did not want to grind and rivet new ball joints in. I just didn't want to do that. So I bought new ones. Plus we get new bushings, which I'm sure these are trashed with the mileage on this truck. Same thing for the top. And those are just Moog replacements. Now these are not the 2 degree additional camber like I used on the green truck, because I'm only going 4 inches. Generally you can get into alignment spec at the 4-inch mark. So we will just have to see. Hopefully that works for me, but these are different than the ones on the green truck. 2-inch spindles, 2-inch springs, new bump stops, shock extensions, flip kit, McGoy's helper bags that we're gonna go put in the back. The behind that we've got new outer tie rods, and then new sway bar end links, and then brakes. Guys, I decided to do brakes. This is a drum brake truck in the back, disc brake in the front. I decided to just go ahead and buy some power stop brake rotors for the front and new pads. And then the spindles, the one thing is different about these, this is a 17-inch version of the McGoy spindles. I'm a big McGoy's fan when it comes to drop spindles. I think I just like them. I've used a lot. To me, I don't know, just they go into spec, they don't ride bad, there's no issues with them. But the difference being is the 16-inch version that I used on this and the 17-inch version that you see here, that's just if you want to run a different wheel size. I know a lot of people have asked about that. Look, if you wanted to run a 16-inch wheel, you would have to use those. This one's for a 17-inch and up, but the main difference here that I didn't want to deal with is on the 16-inch version, so not these, you have to move the ball joint, the lower ball joint, to the bottom in order to make those work that are like on my green truck. But on this, you do not have to do that. You just put them on like normal. But I will tell you this, in the past, guys, I've had some bump steer issues with the 17-inch version, and that's why I always go with the 16-inch. But we're gonna try this again. Hopefully I don't have that same issue. I don't really know why. The geometry seems to be the same, but that's just always why I chose the 16-inch version. No difference. You get 2 inches of drop out of both. Either way, that's what we're using. But I'm about ready to get started here. I did go ahead and chalk the front wheel. Guys, anytime you're lifting on the back, I'm gonna start in the back. You wanna lift on, or you wanna put something in front of the front wheel so it doesn't roll on you. We're gonna lift. I'm not gonna show you guys where I lift it. I'm just gonna put it in the center of the rear end, lift it up, and then get a jack stand here. And you'll go ahead and see what I've done underneath the bed, which I will explain once we get the wheels off and whatnot. But we're also gonna have to do wheels and tires. I didn't even talk about that. You guys will just have to see what I decided to go with. I am not gonna be using these wheels. Obviously these tires won't work with the drop we're going to. So let's get started. Let's get this thing off the ground. I think the next thing you guys will see will be with the wheels off and this thing up. So we got this thing off the ground, supported in the center here by the center of the differential. And then I've got 2 jack stands right where the frame starts to straighten out. So about under the door, you can see. So what I wanted to show you guys is, you can see that I've already got it notched. Kind of how this worked out was, my buddy Mike, who helped me notch my dually back when I had it. When I bought this truck, I immediately had these in my shop. So he had an extra day. I ran down there, didn't take my camera. We lifted the bed off in his shop and welded these in. You could see they're from Reckless. You could see the little R in there, but they are a weld in, and guys, they are really, really well made. And the only reason I chose to go with the weld in is because, one, this one goes a little higher than the factory, or the Beltec or the McGoy's C-notch where it's bolt in. And to be honest with you guys, I thought I might pull a trailer with it. Look, if you're planning on pulling a trailer, I would probably suggest a weld-in one. I've pulled trailers with a bolt-in one and never had an issue, but the older I get, the more I just want it to be strong, and these are strong. There is definitely, they are not going anywhere. So that's really a big part of the rear of these trucks, is getting that part accomplished. So you can see we've already kind of cheated and got that done. So sorry I didn't show you guys that, but if you want to see like a bolt-in C-notch, you can go back and look at my older videos. They're all the same, and literally you just cut, drill, and bolt the C-notch in. But either way, like I said, that's out of our way. It's already finished. We don't have to worry about that. So where we're going to start here is, I actually think we're going to start by taking the rear hitch off, and the main reason is we're going to need as much clearance as we can get, especially to get to the bolts and the hangers back here and the shackles. So in order to get this guy off, there's a couple 21 millimeters. You can see the 2 on the outside here. Then there are 2 more on the inside. And then I believe that the bolts that come through the frame are 22. So you should have a total of 3 down this, 1 right here. So 4 on each side, essentially. So we'll go ahead and get those out of place. Like I said, they should be 21s and 22s. And once we get those out of place, we'll go ahead and drag this out from under the truck. It needs to be resprayed anyway. Somebody made a comment in one of my videos about that, and I do have to agree, guys, that looks pretty crappy. So we'll take care of that while we've got it off the truck. Now that we got the hitch out of the way, that gives us a little more access. Like I said, back here, we're gonna have access to that rear shackle. So in order to get that access, you have to take that out. I don't know why they didn't notch it from the factory, but either way, we got it out. It was all 21 millimeters, by the way. So instead of having a 22, it was all 21s. So down here, we're gonna go ahead and take the shock out. You can see there's a nut and bolt. Well, hopefully you can see. A nut and a bolt there in the bottom of the shock. I'm gonna go ahead on both sides and take that out. So the top and the bottom are all 21s. Take those out, and obviously you're gonna reuse those down the road, so keep those. Same thing with all these bolts for the most part, guys. Just make sure that you set them aside, know what they are. If you have to tag and bag them, if you don't know what they go with, I generally just try, like when I take it off, I'll set it with the shock. That way I know it's, you know, for the shock. So we're gonna go ahead and whip those out. So there should be 4 total, two on each side, and then we'll move on. So now that we got the shocks out of place, you can see that one's on the driver's side's gone, the passenger side's gone. I'm gonna go ahead and tackle the U-bolts. So these are also 21. It's really nice that everything's 21 down here. We're gonna go ahead and get those loose. Now, just know that this rear end is gonna get, you know, loose, because we're down to the last thing that's holding it to the leaf pack. So if you want, you can put a, I've still got the jack supporting the center, but it's still gonna wanna rock one way or the other if you're not completely balanced. So you may put an extra jack stand or a block of wood or something under this if you don't feel comfortable, but that is going to be my next step, is taking those out, and then we will try to lower the rear end down as much until we get quite a bit of tension on our e-brake lines or our brake lines, and then we'll kind of lay back. But I want to go ahead and get this completely loose. I got the U-bolts loose, and you can see that we have some rocking here because it's loose. But now we need to go ahead. Here's how I do it, guys. The instructions are going to tell you to take the leaf packs out on both sides, which, look, that's fine on this side because you have access to the front bolt. Well, on the other side, the gas tank's in the way. So generally what I do is I do take this one out. So we're going to go ahead and take this bolt out. I believe it's a little bigger than a 21. It actually might be a 21. I don't remember. I'll let you guys know on the size here in a minute. But we need to take that guy out, and we need to take the 21s out of the back. Now, you don't have to take the shackle loose, but you do need to take the bottom 21 back here in the and the rear holder loose. So we're gonna take those loose. We're gonna get this leaf pack completely out of the truck. Now, one other thing is you do not, this plate, this top plate, we are not going to be using. So you can discard that or set it aside, or I don't know why, but I saved this stuff, guys. One of the things I've noticed that I've never noticed on any of the other trucks that I've dropped is this thing has, I don't know if it's factory or somebody's put it in, but you can see it has a pinion shim here on the bottom for the pinion angle. So it's actually, I don't know how many degrees it is, but generally I would reverse this center pin, but now companies have kind of understood that that sucks to do. So they've made the hole bigger and you can just set your saddle on top. So we're not gonna do that. But what I will tell you guys is if I have any vibration, I may have to come back, loosen this all up, and then move that shim up top so we get the proper alignment. Now, generally your saddles have that built in place, so you don't have that problem, but that's something to keep in mind. So if you guys have this, you know, think about that if you have some drive line, basically some vibrations in your drive line once you get everything back together. But at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and knock this leaf spring out. The other one, I'm just going to loosen that front bolt. And so you can do that by putting a 12 millimeter on the end and manually loosening it so we have some movement back and forth. But we're also going to take out the hanger in the back on the other side so we can swing that thing around this axle. We got the leaf spring out. Actually, that was 1 inch up front, guys. So the very front bolt is a 1 inch bolt. But we got it out. There's a couple things that we need to do. For one, we obviously need to put it on the bottom side, but I need to switch this because we took off the stock hanger earlier and I did a 2 inch drop on this truck. I need to move this down 1 hole to get me at 7 because we're gonna get 6 out of the flip kit and then an additional 1 inch out of the shackle. So we need to make sure that we don't leave it in that one, otherwise we'll be at 8 because that's a 2 inch. We're at the top of it and plus the 6, so we'd be at a total of 8. I don't wanna be that low. So I'm gonna take this out and just lightly put it in the other one. I'm not gonna torque it down yet, so we're just gonna move it up 1. And then the other side, like I said, I did go ahead and get it loose, but because the gas tank, you can't get that front bolt out, so I do have it loose. And generally what I do, and we're not gonna do it for a minute here, but we slide the rear end this way, we loop it up over the top of that leaf spring on the other side, which I'll show you during the time that we do that. But at this point, since I've got this stuff apart, I'm gonna go ahead, do this here, and I wanna go ahead and grab my airbag bracket because there's nothing in the way here. It's just an awesome time to put that bracket around the frame. So let's go grab it and see what's involved in putting it on. About the situation we're running into here. The kit that I bought from McGaughy's, I just like their stuff. It's meant to be with the bolt-on C-notch. So you're supposed to take the rear bolts out of the C-notch, put this in place, use the longer bolts, bolt it back in place. Well, obviously we chose to weld this one in, and so that doesn't work. So it's not a huge deal really. What we need to do is just kind of center this up here, and we're just gonna have to drill holes, and then on the outer side here, because we've got a difference in width, we'll just have to put a washer behind it. Not a big deal whatsoever, but just a little more time than what you would do if you were, if you had a bolt-on C-notch. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this kind of leveled up in here, and I'm putting it the very bottom corner of this right up against the weld that you see here. And yeah, we're gonna go ahead and put it in place. I think that will be fine. If you feel more comfortable waiting until you get the leaf spring back up in there, you could. But those bags, they have quite a bit of play in them. And I'm looking at the picture, and to be honest with you, that's pretty much where it lies, is up against the weld on the McGaughy's kit too. So the other thing is I do have my green truck. If I wanted to, I could go over there and measure, because I do have the bolt-in C-notch from McGaughy's on it, and I have the exact same helper bag kit. But I think we're gonna go with what we've got here, because I'm not gonna get an accurate measurement, seeing as it is a 6 foot bed compared to this 5.8 or 5.9 foot bed. So my measurements wouldn't be the same. I would have to literally measure from maybe the center of the opening to maybe the front of this or the back of this, and I might do that. But either way, I think, like I said, I'm just gonna set it up in here, mark it and drill it, and we'll get it bolted in. As I said, I've got it up there. I got it up against this bottom weld, as far forward as it can go. And then I go ahead and mark it. So now I'm gonna drill some pilot holes, and then we'll use a stepped drill bit to go ahead and finish off drilling those. Shouldn't take me too long to get those finished, and then we can bolt that on. Now I do still have access to reach back behind and get the nut on those. If you guys are wondering, it's not completely closed off. Now it is boxed the same exact way on the other side, but I can reach up in there and get the bolts on there, which is good because otherwise you wouldn't have any other way to get that in there. So unfortunately my battery went dead on my drill, so I can't finish the bag brackets, but that's fine. We need to get this leaf spring on the driver's side underneath. Remember, we can't get it out because the bolt can't get out without removing the gas tank. So this is how I do this. I haven't showed this really on any of the videos. I've just told you guys, but I'm gonna try to show you. It may not go well, who knows, but I've got my son over there. We've got obviously the rear end's on the jack with the center of the rear end's on a jack that's sticking out of the back. I've got another jack in the middle, but what I generally do is I push this thing over. And you're gonna put a little bit of pressure on your brake line, but then once you do that, we can get our leaf pocket, our leaf spring out, and we need to get it obviously on the bottom here. So what we're going to attempt to do is move it back and move it over. And like I said, you're going to be putting quite a bit of pressure on that brake line, but it's necessary to get this done. So we're just gonna have to get rough with it, push it over. And once we get it over, pull this out like what I did. It helps if you have this off, you just have a little more room. I didn't mess anything up here, but once we do that, then we've got him over here, push that jack over. We can push it back, and now we're underneath. All right, that's good. So that's how I do it. Now we don't have any pressure on the brake line or anything, but we're underneath like what we need to be. So I'm gonna leave this loose until we do get the bag bracket in, just so I can have more room. But at this point, we've accomplished what we needed. Well, after quite a bit of drilling, I went ahead and got those bolted on. So guys, I just drilled 4 holes. Like I said, I pushed it up as close to the pocket as I could get it. At the bottom, it's touching, like down here in this corner. And so I think that's gonna work for us, but I did go ahead and do both sides. So our next step really is, this is a little bit controversial on the crew cabs, right? So a lot of people say that your drive shaft's gonna rub, and look at that thing, it's a monster. It's like 5 inches in diameter. And so I looked under this truck, and there's a couple spots that it could possibly rub. There's like a little brace in the center of the floor, and then this rearmost gas tank brace, they say sometimes it rubs. But what we're going to do, because I'm running helper bags, we're gonna go ahead and not trim anything, and we're just gonna see. So if it rubs, then we will address it if that happens, but I don't know. I get mixed reviews. Some people say it does. Some people go to a 2-piece drive shaft, which requires you to move the evap canister over there. I'm not going to go to a 2-piece, so I will trim if I have to, and I will even get a smaller diameter drive shaft made. I think 4 inches is the smallest they can go with the length because it's so long. But if worse comes to worse, that is the option that I will take. But we are just going to continue as if there's not going to be any rubbing, and then we'll just let you guys know if there is. But another thing, you'll notice that my exhaust was cut off. I actually put a stock muffler on this thing a while back. I didn't show you guys that. I bought used at a salvage yard, and I just lopped it off right at that last hanger. So we're not going to have to worry about it hitting the exhaust. But at this point, I did get this leaf spring put back underneath. I've just got that front bolt in and snug. You are gonna have to kind of push your muffler over a little bit to get that bolt in the same way it came. Now you could reverse it and go the other way, but I like things the way they came. So at this point, we need to lift the rear end up, and you can see I've got 2 jacks. I've got one under the center and one under the kind of the pinion area there where the drive shaft hooks up. That's because it's going to start to roll forward as you lift it up. What we need to do is we need to get it far enough up so we can get these hangers back into the holders back in the back and at least get the bolts in. You don't need to tighten anything yet, guys. And you also notice, remember I said I was going to move that up one. I did go ahead and move that up as well. So we're going to lift this thing up, the rear end I mean, and get these back into their pockets. And then we'll worry about getting the rest of the airbag lined up and the saddles underneath. The other thing is we are going to have to, if you don't use the other piece that comes with the airbag kit, you can see our e-brake line here. There is a piece that sets that back because otherwise this is going to hit right where our airbag needs to be, this guy right here. So we'll do that as well. But first I want to go ahead and get this rear end up and get it supported by the weight of on the weight of the leaf springs, the whole rear end. So we'll get that done. I'm not going to show you guys that. I'm just going to lift it up. It's probably going to be a hassle for me by myself, but you can do it on your own. If you have, you could use a jack stand up here as well under the front of the differential, and just an extra jack. It is nice, but we're going to lift it up, get that in, and we'll move on. So you can see now that I've got the axle on top of the leaf springs, and I've just got the bolts in there, you know, just not even tight. They're just in with the nut on the end. So I need to take this 13 off to give us room. I got new batteries for my impact. See how they work here. Seems to work pretty good. All right, so you can see what I'm talking about. There's an extension piece that needs to go on that. Looks like this here. And so actually, we could go ahead and put it in place. So this goes on here like this, and it just gives it more of an angle to throw that out around the bag. We could just go ahead and tighten it up actually. And it needs to face this direction. So that's what we needed there. You may have to move the tab on this a little bit, but we'll deal with that here in a minute. What I want to show you guys now is what we really need to do next, and that is we need to get the bag kind of situated on the bracket. So this is your bottom bracket that goes underneath that bolt that's on top of the leaf spring down there. This is going to straddle that. Okay, well our bag mounts here, but before we do that, we need to screw this in place. And don't get crazy here, guys. It's already got threading on it, and I believe it's 9/16. Just get it snug, and we need to inflate this bag. So I don't know if you guys have an air compressor, it's best. If you have pretty good lungs, you might be able to get it blown up. But we need to inflate this bag. Now, the instructions on the kit tell you to kind of mount this in there and, you know, move it back and forth if it's in the way. Look, I have always literally just centered this, and I'll show you once I get the bag inflated, but I've always centered it and never had an issue. And then we need to run a bolt through the bottom here to bolt that in place. But I'll show you guys once I get it inflated kind of what I'm talking about. So here's what I'm talking about. See, it's all blown up now. Here's what's important. Like I said, it tells you to mark this because you do have movement side to side. So if you're running really fat tires, obviously you'd want to set it, you know, more towards the inside. I'm not, so I just center it. And so we need to put a little bit of thread locker. It comes with a washer and a lock washer, but the instructions do say to put a little thread locker on it, guys. Don't go crazy here, because if you ever have to take this apart, you're gonna regret it. Just put maybe a dab. That's way more than a dab. Okay, that'll never come apart. Not a lot of control on that, I guess. All right, so once we get that, we need to put this through the bottom and bolt this on. But here's what's very, very important. The top of this, so once we get it, I'm gonna kind of snug it down by hand. This needs to be all lined up. And what I mean by that is these two holes on the top need to be parallel with this bracket on the bottom. So hopefully you guys can see that. You need to make sure of that, otherwise you're gonna have issues. So we'll get it kind of centered where I want it. And then we'll make sure that we're still square on top. It needs to come over. So we need to have a straight line between the hole and that plate down there. Let's see if I can move the camera a little bit. So we need to have a straight line from these two holes to this hole in the bottom of the plate. That's what I'm talking about. Once we have that and we're centered, check it, double check it, triple check it. We want that to be parallel. It has to be parallel, otherwise we're gonna compromise the bag when it's inflating. And then we can tighten this bottom bolt up. And I'm using a 14, I'm sure it's standard. But as you're tightening it, make sure it's not moving. Mine moved a little bit from side to side. I want to make sure that we're still lined up. And we are. Maybe just a hair off. This is probably the hardest thing you'll do back here, guys. All right, we're gonna get that snug, and then we'll talk about where it goes in this whole, well, between the rear end. One other thing, the thing I just showed you, I was facing it the wrong direction. It actually goes in the truck like this, but I wanted to be able to show you guys. So on this side, you need to line it up this way with this air inlet on the outside. On the other side, it would be like I had it set up just a minute ago. This may get a little noisy, but all right, so here's our next step. You can see this guy here, this is our saddle. This is where the rear end is gonna mount now. We need to put this in, the hole needs to face the front, okay? Because we're pushing the rear end back because we're lengthening, basically we're lengthening it with getting it lower. So it's gonna push the rear end back some to give the drive shaft plenty of room to move. And then this should have your pinion angle built in it. So we need to lift this up and kind of slide it underneath here. There we go. We got it on the hole. Now, that piece that we just made for the airbag bracket, this guy right here, slides underneath that. So I generally put what I just put in first and then lift this up. Try to go underneath it if I can. I think I've got it. Oh, no, you need to go forward. Now we've got it. So once we get that in place, then we can go ahead, kind of move our airbag over, and I'll show you guys more of that in a second. And we can put this guy on the top, followed by our factory U-bolts. Now I'm just setting these here. Once we do that, should come with a new plate that goes on the bottom. And so we'll get that plate on the bottom once I let some pressure off the jack. I'm doing this a little bit off camera. And there's one reason, and normally I do this, but I didn't do it on this, but okay, because remember the pinion shim that was on the bottom of this leaf pack? I ended up taking that thing out. In order to do that, you do have to take that center pin out, basically what we slid the saddle over. When I did that, I reversed it. So the threads are pointing down. And the reason I did that, for a couple reasons. One, obviously the U-bolts weren't long enough. Nothing was lining up with that shim in place, even on the bottom. So I took it out, and then my U-bolts were long enough, but that centering pin was too far up, and it was hitting the rear end. So it was coming through the saddle, coming through the airbag bracket, and hitting the rear end. So I reversed that pin, and I should have showed you guys that. If you go back and look at some of my older videos, that's something I always do. Like I said, I thought the manufacturers had figured that out. They do not put it in the instructions. But what I do is I take a series of clamps, like I clamp here. Actually, I clamp on these two. The overload, I clamp here in the center with, you can see I've got a couple clamps here that I've got out. I clamp it in about 3 places, put something on the head of the bolt, and then take the 15 nut off the end. And then generally, guys, if it's not super rusty, it'll come out, you can reverse it, and you're good. So that's what I did. While I was reversing it, obviously I took that pinion shim off. So we are good now, but you can see on the bottom that the threaded end is facing down. And I do have the U-bolts in place. So now we need to move on to the airbag, and you can see it looks worse than what it is, guys. This is normal for it to look like this, but I'm gonna put you on the tripod here, see if I can get my light to set somewhere and show you guys what I'm talking about. But once you get all that accomplished, sorry, it's gonna be a little noisy here, guys. We need to push this through, so it'll be kind of out like this. You just need to line this guy up and put it up in here. That's all we need to do. And you could see why we needed it parallel to that hole that was in the bottom of that plate, because this needs to line up. So now we can go grab our bolts that thread into the top here, get our lock washers and our washers, and get this started. So same situation like we did on the bottom. Washer, lock washer. And guys, don't over tighten these. These are the same 9/16, I believe. Sometimes you gotta push them down a little bit to get them started. And whatever you do, don't over tighten these, because if you do, you will mess up the bag and then you're completely hosed. There we go. Sometimes it's easier to push that down a little bit and get them started. And we need to do this on both sides. And then we're not gonna worry about the airbag line right this minute. Now these have the ability to move in and out. See, you've got some movement here. I generally just line it up with the outside. You just want to make sure that the back of your bag isn't touching. And right now it isn't a really good representation of it because the bag's deflated. I mean, it doesn't have any pressure in it. So we'll go ahead and tighten these up. Like I said, don't get them too tight. And I like to put it here for now. If you see that it's really close to the tire, you can of course move it in. You just don't want it to be touching here, and you don't want it to touch the tire. You don't want it rubbing on anything. And then generally what I do, this moves, but I generally face this back because I go over the frame rail with the airlines. Now that we got the bag all bolted up top here, I did go ahead and put the e-brake bolt in. So remember when we took it off the rear end, we put that bracket on, I put that bolt in place just a 1/2 inch. But now we need to put our shock extensions on. And people ask me this all the time, do you have to have shock extensions? Well, I mean, no, you don't have to. But I generally run them, guys, and here's why. Not only do you need a shorter shock, right? So you're obviously gonna need a shorter shock because we're lowering it. There's no travel, it'll be bottomed out. But when you lower it, it also changes the geometry of the shock. So not only do we get, and we're really not even extending it per se, we're just getting the geometry back correct so it rides the best. So anytime somebody rides in maybe something I've lowered compared to somebody, you know, something's done cheap with maybe stock shocks or no shock extensions, they're generally like, well, why does yours ride so much better? That's why. Stuff like this, it's like, I want to say 90 bucks. Of course, I'm listing all this stuff down below, but look, guys, don't cheap out. Get the shocks, get the shock extensions, and these guys, literally, you have a spacer that goes in the middle to keep it from, you know, buckling essentially, but it goes around just like this. I may not be able to do this from this angle, but we're gonna try. So you get the bolt in, and then you put the spacer in the center, and then obviously a washer and the nut on the outside. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this. I can't do it at the angle I'm at and showing you guys. So we'll put this thing in, and then we'll be ready for the shock. You can see I've got that in now. We can go ahead and snug this down, just get it nice and snug, and then we can put the shock in. Once we got that tight, I'm gonna go ahead and put the shock in place, and we're just using the factory bolts, nuts and bolts actually. And I generally put facing the same way, so generally I put, of course that's gonna move on me. I put the threads facing out like they were before. And remember, we are not tightening. We're just putting them in. You can run them down as far as you can by hand, but do not tighten yet. And then same thing with the bottom here. And now that we've got these in, I probably am gonna go ahead and take some time and clean off these brakes. I really wanna paint these brake drums. And so I think what I will do is I'm gonna take a wire wheel and just kind of spin this, sit here in my chair and grind all the, kind of the rust off. And then I'm gonna find something to put on these to make them look a little nicer, because they just look terrible. And I don't know why these things don't come coated, but I'm not gonna just let them set like this. So I don't know where I'll take them off and spray them. I'll kind of let you guys know, but for now I'm just gonna use a wire brush on my drill and just kind of clean them up. It's just easy to roll it around, scrub and roll around and so on. So I think that's my next step. Okay guys, so I went ahead and coated this. I just used my wire brush on my drill. Went over it, knocked, the big stuff off. And then I just used some POR 15 caliper paint. I will tell you guys this, there's some other stuff out there, G2, which I used on my green truck. Honestly, this doesn't set as good as the G2. The G2 stuff is really, really thin. This is a little thicker. And because it's a little thicker, it kind of shows brush strokes a little more. Now this is just a first coat. I'm gonna go over it twice. And like I said, I'm not gonna show you guys that. I could have taken these off if I wanted and sprayed them outside, but it's raining, it's kind of cold. So I just decided I'm gonna do it in here where it's warm, and maybe we'll get better adherence with the paint. But I am going over it with a second coat of this. But on to hooking up our airbags. Now there's not really a lot, guys, I'm gonna show you here, in the fact that it comes with just standard DOT approved line. It's 1/4-inch line, and it's really not bad. This is the T fitting that's gonna go somewhere in the middle, and I'll try to show you guys once I get it kind of routed where I want it, but you literally just push this in and it locks. That's all there is to it. And then if you want to pull it off, you can push this back and unlock it. But they give you enough to go from each bag to the back. And generally I used to tie it off. It has, of course, the T fitting, but then it has a line to put air in both of them. It doesn't have an individual one per side. You're gonna tee off. But normally I would put this in the license plate bolt, but because we've got that backup camera, I'm not gonna do that. So I'm gonna have to figure out another place to put it. It may just be temporary for now, because maybe down the road I might put a compressor on this with maybe that, they make a Bluetooth or a wireless remote where you can I kind of like that idea better, because you can stand back with the trailer on and kind of see where it's gonna level out or where the best positioning is. But for now, we're gonna go ahead and loop the line through kind of the frame. If you have exhaust, make sure you keep it away from exhaust. Of course, anything hot will melt it. But other than that, I'll kind of just show you once I get it tied up where I want it to go. So let's take a look at how we routed them. I've got coming over the frame rail, you can see it right there. It's this line. Got it tied to all that. And then I came back here, so I did the same thing on the other side. And then I've got it just teed off right here. And look, guys, this isn't the way I'm gonna leave it. But for right now, until I get the hitch back on, I'm not really sure where I want to mount it. Like I said, normally I'd go through a license plate screw, but because we put that backup camera on the license plate, it really doesn't work out that way. So I'm probably going to mount it somewhere on the drop hitch, but I don't have that back in here. I'm going to paint that. So either way, that's kind of how we ran the line on this side. And then on the other side, we've got it coming, see it right there, and it kind of comes up underneath. I didn't want to tie it there. You can see it up there, right there, and then back all the way to where it runs into the bag. I like to leave it on the frame and not necessarily on the body, because if you ever lift the body off, let's say you had to put a fuel pump or something in, just makes life easier. Just one less line you have to, you know, unhook. So try to tie it to the frame and then to maybe the bumper. So that's what I did. I've got it zip tied all the way down there to that T. So let's put some air in it and make these bags. You can tell they're all kind of weird looking right now. We'll put a little bit of air in it and make it look nice and get them lined out. Well, guys, we've got the bags inflated. This is the way they're supposed to look when you've got air in them. So I've got about 8 pounds in them right now. You can see they, you know, not much. And we are pretty close on that rear cross member, but I think because of the airbags, we're not gonna have to notch that. Now, if you didn't have these and the suspension wasn't grabbing something, notice I don't have any bump stops on this thing. Oh, I just touched my paint. I don't have any bump stops on it because the bags are gonna pretty much act as a bump stop. Not gonna really need them. We're really close on the brace that goes across the bed. I may end up having to notch it as well because the rear end is close, but I really think with the airbags, with even just the amount of the pressure in them at 8 pounds, you're supposed to keep at least 5 in them. And we're really close to 5, actually maybe closer to 7, but I think that's gonna save us here. But I've got it supported in the center of the differential, just as extra bone, basically extra safety. And then I've got a jack stand under each side of the rear axle. I bounced up and down on the rear end, like I stood on the bumper, kind of bounced it up and down, making sure all the suspension gets where it needs to be. And so now we need to go through and torque some stuff. And normally I would do this with the wheels on and some weight. Like I've got some blocks that I set under the wheels, just because it's so low that you can't get under the thing. But this way will work too. You just need the suspension loaded and you need to move it up and down, making sure everything gets in place. If there's any binding that it comes loose, and so bounce up and down on it and make sure it's supported, guys. Don't get under it if it's not supported, but we need to torque everything. So it's very simple on these trucks. The very back, so the top and the bottom both of the rear shackle, that goes to 70 foot-pounds. Don't just hammer this down with an impact. You're gonna have squeaks and binds and it's gonna ride like crap. So 70 pounds there. On the front, because we did take the front loose, and actually on this side we took it out, the front goes to 110. The top of the shock and the bottom of the shock go to 70. So we got 70 there, 70 in the back, 110 up here. And then the U-bolts themselves, they go to 53. So that's pretty much it, guys. There's nothing else we really need to torque, other than obviously when we put the wheel on. But I'm gonna go ahead and torque this, and then I'm hoping to move to the front at that point once we get all these torqued. Well, now we are onto the front. So we've got all the back lined out, everything's torqued down. All we need to do is put wheels on it, which I'm gonna show you guys at the end. So here's what we need to do. We need to get some of this stuff unhooked. I'm gonna start here with the ABS line, and I'm just using a flat blade screwdriver here. Probably should use some needle nose pliers. As a matter of fact, oh, no, that came out. It has had a brake line replacement at some point. I'm assuming when the brakes went bad, they probably replaced the brake pads. Or the brake lines, I mean. But we're gonna go ahead and unplug all this stuff. I'm gonna need my... These guys here are awesome for releasing clips and stuff like that without trying to damage anything. So we got this guy unhooked. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take, there's a 10 millimeter on top of that holds the brake line to the top. And I'm hoping we don't have any issues with that because it's aftermarket. It's not like the factory replacement piece. So we get that loose. I like to put these 10s back in place. Hopefully you guys can see. Yeah, you can see what I'm doing. And then we're gonna take the 10 out of this upper control arm. And if we can get that out of place, there we go. We'll put that 10 back in where it goes. So once we do that, we need to go ahead and get the rotor out of the way. And it's two 19 millimeters. Sometimes you get lucky and they come loose, sometimes they don't. And that is not a 19. I've got this thing supported by jack stands, make sure you do that. That does not look like the factory size. This is what, I replace all my parts with GM parts. Pretty sure this isn't GM stuff here. But either way, we're gonna go with it. So we got the brake loose. Now I'm gonna go grab something. I might be able to get lucky and hang it up here on it, but I really need to get something to hang it unless it'll reach the ground. Oh, it reaches the ground. That's even better. Okay, we'll just do that. We're just gonna set it on the ground because it reaches and not putting any slack in that line. Once we do that, we need to get the 18s out that hold the actual bracket on, which is this guy right here. And you can leave the pads in it. Remember, we're gonna be replacing the pads, so I guess actually I'll have to take the pads out, but you need to grab an 18 and get this guy off. I will tell you guys, having an impact makes your life so much better. Get one. I always list it in the description down below because it's literally one of the best tools I've ever purchased. So that came off, not quite like how I wanted it, but we'll set that aside. Well, now we should be able to move this back and grab, I want to say it's a T25 here to get this guy out of the center. We'll get that off and then we should have the actual rotor itself loose. Now this one I generally like to do by hand and not with the impact, just because if you strip it, you're gonna be drilling and it doesn't act like it's real loose. Oh, it's not too bad. And it's a T30. So we got that out of the way. And now you have a couple different options. If you want to take this all off as one unit, you can. I don't know, guys. I kind of go, sometimes I do it that way. It's really, really heavy when you take it apart like that. And we're gonna have to take this apart anyway to get it in to the new drop spindle. So look at my boots, they're completely trash. See what I'm talking about, guys? Just replace it all while you're in here. I think I will probably get the sway bar loose first, and I'm gonna go back and forth and do side to side. So if you get your sway bar loose, that should relax this suspension even more. So I'm gonna go ahead and take it loose and then maybe even take, let's go ahead and take the cotter pins out of the tie rod, maybe get it loose as well. Generally this is a 15. Let's see here. Feels like it might be. It is. And the top is spinning and there's no real good way to grab it. So I'm gonna grab a pair of vice grips here and see if we can clamp on the top of it. Sometimes they have like a nut on the top. This is, I don't think this is a factory one. Sometimes they'll snap too, so. But remember, we bought replacements, so. Oh. Maybe now. There we go. I think it snapped. Definitely snapped. Well, maybe not. We'll go ahead and get it out of the way after a little bit of a struggle here. And then we'll move on to probably, I'm guessing the tie rod end. I think I am going to try to take this all off as one unit. So we'll get the tie rod, and it's generally a 21. Actually, it is not. It is a 18. So let's knock it loose, actually. Holy cow, that's tight. And we also got new tie rod ends, remember? So let's go get a hammer and we'll hit this and see if we can get it loose. And generally how I do this is if you just hit it a couple times, and since we're replacing it, you can hit on the end. Just don't like mushroom the end out where it won't come through. And that thing's shot too. Look at that. So good thing we're replacing it. All right, the next thing I'm gonna do is, man, I think these ball joints are trash too. We're gonna go ahead and we'll loosen the strut, and it generally is a 15 on the bottom. Some people leave it till last. It's kind of up to the person. It's not a 15, feels more like a 13. Yeah, it's a 13. Almost everything's gonna be new back up here. And then on the top, it looks to be a 15. Let's see if I can swing you guys up here to the top. You should be able to access it right here. And so if it starts to spin on you, you may have to put a set of vice grips up top, but I generally loosen this with a wrench because it's generally not too tight. I think if a guy were in a hurry, he could probably disassemble the whole front of these trucks with impact relatively quickly. And I'm gonna guess it's gonna start to spin as this loosens up. Yep, there it goes. It's pretty normal. We'll just put these on top and go ahead and get that the rest of the way out. Now that we got all that loose, we need to go ahead and loosen our upper ball joint. So this guy right here. Now guys, this is important because you don't want to take it all the way off, because if you do, you're gonna have an issue with the spring wanting to fly out and hit you in the face. So I've got a jack, I don't know if you guys can see it, but I have a jack underneath it, and I've got pressure up against that bottom A-arm. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna loosen this, we're gonna give it a couple wraps with the hammer and make sure that we get it loose. Once we get it loose, then we'll start to gradually screw it off there. So let me go grab, I think it's an 18. And I generally like to do this. They're generally only like 30 some foot-pounds, so you can do it with a ratcheting wrench. It makes your life a little easier. All right, let's see how tight it is. Oh, it's not too bad. Remember what I said though. We're just loosening it. Some people like to leave the shock in as an added thing to catch that, but I find it hard to get the shock out if you do that. So once we've done that, now it's loose. Did you see it pop loose? We're gonna lift up on our jack a little, see if we can go ahead and get this thing the rest of the way out. Of course, it's spinning.
Might have to grab something to keep it from spinning here, I guess. Yeah, I'm gonna have to grab something that, these have something that you could stick in the end of them, like a, probably a 6mm. We'll grab something, put in there, and then get that the rest of the way off. Man, that was a good guess. It is a 6mm. And we're wanting to go Titan on this. Ooh. Did not go in there all the way. Yeah. Man, this one's a fighter. Yeah, we'll get it eventually. It's gonna pop up probably when we do get it. All right, we got it loose. Now we need to slowly let the A-arm down. Now, like I said, we're gonna try to slowly let this down. Try to release some pressure on that spring and you can back up. I've backed up a little bit. Always makes me a little bit nervous, because that spring has a lot of pressure on it. See if we can get the jack out from under it. That'd be nice. But now we could go ahead and grab a pry bar. If you've got a long pry bar, that's nice. And we can stick under there and knock this spring out. It's still gonna be kind of sprung, guys, so. Sometimes that makes people nervous. So now we need to worry about getting the bottom off, which is generally a 24. You know what? Actually, I don't know what I'm thinking. Normally, if you were keeping your bottom A-arm, you would take the 24 off, but because I'm not using the spindle or that, I don't need any of that. So I don't even have to do that. That's just wasted time. So we'll go ahead and see if we can get the 15s out of this here. I don't know, we're getting ready to see how tough my impact is. So I want to see if it will take this 15 out, because I think they're 133 foot-pounds if I remember right, which is pretty snug. And I just don't know that the impact will do that. As soon as I find a 15, let's see what happens. That's pretty nice. This is why you guys need an impact. Now generally these are pretty snug. We'll see if we can pry on it a little bit in a couple spots. Sometimes you can bump the back of it. That thing is in there. Probably didn't help that the truck went who knows how long without brakes on it, from all the rail dust that we saw. But we'll get it out of there. Either way, I'm gonna leave that be for now. We're gonna move on to what I think is 21 or 22 millimeter to get the actual bottom A-arm out. These have a nut on the, closest to the back, and they have a bolt coming through. The bolt head itself is an 18 millimeter. The back, I'm sure is metric, but 13, or actually 15/16 fits it really nice. So that's what we are going to use, because 22 is actually the deepest metric that I have. So we'll see what happens. These are going to be tight. That's impressive. I don't know what's more impressive. The way this works, or the amount of time in my life I've done that by hand. That is insane. So we got that one. Let's move on to the front one. Hopefully we can get in there. Yeah. Perfect. And these do have a washer on them. Just remember that we're going to put them back in just the way they came out. So with the washer and the bolt coming through from the front. Let's see if we can get these things out. There's one. I'm going to have to move the camera, but we'll slide this other one out. At this point, there's really only two things we have left to take off. Obviously, we got to take off this upper A-arm, and then we need to take off our tie rod end. But on the upper A-arm, guys, what I like to do is I like to mark the eccentrics here, and I mark them on both sides. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to line up so when we go to put it back together, we get it as close as possible to the way it was before. So you can see I've marked all of these. You don't even really have to mark that, because we'll probably be taking this out. This truck obviously has probably not been aligned before. So we're going to mark here, and then we're going to mark on the other side as well, and then we can go ahead and get these out of place. Now these should be 21, and I'm not going to be able to get that in there, and it won't go in from the other side. So we're going to do this the old school way, which is fine. They're generally not that, well, they're like 140 foot-pounds, I think. So they are sometimes pretty snug, but we're gonna take them out by hand. Actually wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. This truck just, it seems like it's got a lot of surface rust on it, but no like structural rust. I don't know if you guys noticed that when we were under the back of it. It's literally all like surface rust. And I like to take these out and keep them, obviously, since we marked them, we need to keep them with the original. Sometimes you gotta kind of loosen them up and then knock them out. They put a hole in here so you can get this out, but sometimes it's kind of tricky. Looks like it's gonna fight me. There we go. So I literally put them back together on the floor here, just so I know, and then I set one, you know, like more towards the back. So this one we know goes to the back on this side, and the other one we'll set right beside it when we get it out. I don't know if you guys can hear it raining. It's pouring outside. So look at these bushings. See how cracked and weathered they are? This is another reason, guys, why I choose to go with replacing everything. So now we actually have two more things. So we got to get this tie rod end off right here, which literally we just loosen the jam nut, spin it off. But we need to probably spray some WD-40 on this guy for our bump stop, because we do need to take it off as well. You just got a set of vice grips on this. Once you loosen that jam nut, this thing should, yeah, spin the rest of the way off. And I have quite a pile of old parts, it looks like. And while I'm pretty sure, no, maybe our new one doesn't come with a jam nut. Make sure before you toss your old jam nut that your new one comes with one. If it doesn't, then obviously you need to keep this one. So we're almost completely apart. The last thing, remember I said spray some WD-40 on this. Guys, water sets in this channel and just rots these things. We got a little lucky here. It's a 15 millimeter, and unfortunately you really can't get a socket on it, so like an impact to break it loose. If you had an impact swivel, a little short one, you might be able to get it in there, but this is working. Probably should have used the ratcheting end, but we're gonna get that out and we will be complete with taking everything apart. Once you get everything disassembled, normally guys, I would clean this really well and probably spray some paint on here, but look, I'm in my shop. I don't want paint on every single thing, like overspray on the stuff that's in here. So we're just gonna have to reassemble and take my OCD out of the equation. I know it's tough for you guys to watch that, but I'm not gonna paint it. I got a lot of new parts going on though. So we're gonna start with the lower A-arm. And this is just a Moog replacement, which I'll list down below. What I am going to do though, guys, is right here, I'm gonna put a little bit of grease on the rubber portions here, and then we're just gonna slide it back in. I will tell you guys that the front bolt is a little shorter, and remember they do come in from the front. So I'm gonna go ahead, get this up into place, and then we will talk about how I wanna tighten it down and the torque specs. Let's take a look at how we've got things set up here. So we obviously got the bolts in, both coming in from the front. Remember the nut is on the back. Remember to put your washer on. So we need to torque these down. Now, this suspension doesn't want to be torqued down with it just drooping. Okay, so you can see I've got my jack stand under it and I've got it somewhat level, and now we're going to torque these. These bolts, or the nut on the end of the bolt, need to be torqued to 129 foot-pounds, which is quite a bit. And remember, they're different sizes. The front of it's 18 and the back was what, 15/16, I think? Yeah. So go get your torque wrench, torque these to 129, and then we can be completely done with this, and we can technically take the jack stand out from under it. I probably won't, but you can at that point, because the suspension will be loaded. As you put weight on it, it will move, but we don't want to lock it down with it, you know, facing down, and then you get a ton of bearing, or I mean bushing noise when you're going down the road. So this is the way you need to set it up. Go ahead and torque it, and then we'll move on. Once we have that torqued down, I'm gonna go ahead and put my bump stop in place. And the reason I'm gonna do that is because it's just easier without everything in the way. You really need new bump stops because we are coming down quite a ways. So we're gonna go ahead and get that in place. And if you order the same ones that I list below, 9/16 is the size. And I'm hoping I can get my ratcheting wrench in here to save me a little time. I should be able to get on it for a while anyway. Once we get that complete, then we may go grab probably the uppers and go ahead and get them lined out. I think is what I want to do next. Now on to the uppers. Now the uppers are not side specific, guys, so you don't have to worry about getting the right one. Now the bottoms, they are, so make sure you get the right ones. These guys sometimes are a pain to get in here. Sometimes you kind of got to pry around on these to get them to go. And that's actually the easiest I've ever had one go in. You may have to use a mallet to get them kind of up into place. But remember, we kept these kind of in order. So this is the front one. And we do need to go ahead, I need to grab something and knock this. This means that you can't align it. This is the set area that the factory put it at. We need to pop that out. They should just peel out, but Yeah, so we need to get rid of those, and obviously put these bolts back in, and hopefully in the same manner. That's why we marked, remember? So we'll get it back lined up on the mark. And it's not that imperative right this minute that we get it lined up, so I'm not gonna pay much attention to that. We're gonna just get the bolts in, and then we'll worry about getting it where we need before we kind of snug it down. Similar situation to the bottom. We don't want to tighten it down with it here, and we don't want to tighten it down with it up here. We want it to be somewhat parallel. But before we snug it down, we do need to try to spin our alignment marks back up to get us somewhat close. I'm gonna snug it up just a little bit more. So we're snugging up from the nut, right? But the bolt on the inside is where your adjustment is made. So once we get it somewhat snug, then we can go down here and swing it. I don't know if you guys can see here. I'll get you a little closer. I don't know if you can see our alignment mark right there. We're still a little bit off. And kudos to the guys who get under these trucks and align them. The newer Chevys, see, we're swinging it right there. Now we're lined up. Now we can go ahead and make sure this thing is parallel and tighten it up. But what I was gonna say is the newer Chevy trucks, like the 19 up, they have their adjustment on the bottom, which makes more sense for the guys who have to align them. But either way, we're gonna get the other one kind of in the same spot, lined up. And that may move the other one, so we kind of got to work back and forth. But once we do that, we can go ahead and snug these things down, guys. These go to 140 foot-pounds. That's a lot. And this one did move a little bit. So we're gonna go ahead and snug this up. Now's a good time to go ahead and put your grease zerk fittings in. These little guys, they should come with your new upper and lowers. If they don't, you can buy them separate, but they should. So if you didn't get them, you should have got them. And don't over tighten these guys. They will snap off, and then you got to drill them out, and that's a real bummer. So just get them down to where they're touching. Make sure they're not cross-threading. A lot of times they like to cross-thread. Get them down in there, and that's pretty much it. That one looks good. Go ahead and put the one on the bottom. And then I think we're gonna work on the spindle a little bit, just because it has a couple things that we need to do in order to get it ready to put in place, which obviously we gotta put the spring in first, but I want to have the spindle ready to put in. So let's go grab the spindle. The only real thing that has to be done to the spindles is, and I've already screwed this in, is this little stud. Because once you put a drop on this, you can't get behind and put the bolts in because this is in the way. We need to put this stud in. You can see I've got some Loctite, and we're gonna coat this. You don't want this coming out. Now look, there's two other ones that hold it, and as snug as those things sit in there over the years, chances are you're not gonna hurt anything. But do not over tighten this, guys. It's easy to strip it. I'm using a 1/4 inch drive because I don't want to strip it. Let's see what size it is. 6 millimeter, same that you would use on the center of the ball joint stud. So we're gonna get this thing threaded down in there and just snug it down. And then I'm gonna wipe off that excess. That's it. Don't force it. A lot of people break those. And I don't want any Loctite getting on the bolt that we're gonna run down on it, even though we'll be a long ways away from it. So that's all we really needed to do. I just wanted to show you guys that. I like to have the spindle ready because when we get the spring in place, we're gonna have, you know, all that tension on that bottom A-arm. And so we want to get something underneath it, like a jack, but at the same time, we want to be able to just go ahead and, as a matter of fact, we're going to take these little protective covers off, but we want to be ready to go once we get that spindle in there, or that spring in there, so we can put the spindle on and get everything locked down. These are just protective boots that they ship with, so your rubber doesn't get screwed up. Okay guys, so now we're gonna go grab the spring. As a matter of fact, I'll just get it right now. The only important thing, obviously we're gonna have to move our jack stand, but we wanna get, the spring has a label on it. Try to be able to read the label. The other thing is, I like to, if it's not completely destroyed, which this one is not, I like to put my little rubber protector back on top. And the reason why is that just keeps, you don't have any squeaks and whatnot when you have that on there. If you don't have that, guys, I would suggest putting maybe some coolant line maybe. A lot of times these are destroyed. These are actually in pretty good shape for the amount of miles on this truck. But we want to make sure the top isn't as important. We got this lined up where it needs to go, but we want to get this end of the spring in that opening where it starts right here. That's the goal. So we're gonna struggle with that. I'll try to show you guys, but I think the camera's gonna be in the way because I'm gonna have to be moving around it. I need to get a jack under it, but I'll try to show you as much as I can. Here's what I've decided to do. Look, I can't bend that thing any further down than it's going. So I'm gonna loosen those back up. We'll come back and re-torque them. I'll put something under them to get it level. But guys, I'm not gonna fight this with a pry bar and trying to get that in there. So we're gonna loosen those up so we have a little more play here. You can see now I have, you know, way more room to do what I want to do here. So here's where it gets tricky, because like I said, we got to pull this up and make sure we're lining everything up at the same time. And we're all lined up. We're just gonna have to get the jack under here and start to compress this spring. Be careful, guys. Make sure that your jack's in there nice and easy, where it's not gonna slip. And we'll get this thing lifted up. You can see we got a decent start here. Just be careful. It's got a lot of pressure on it. So once you do that, if it makes you feel better, you can put something in between here. That way, in case it were to pop out, it wasn't gonna pop you in the mouth. But we need to go ahead and get our spindle on here. And it does come with bolts. The new spindle comes with bolts, so we'll see if we can grab those and get those in place. I might put my other jack under here just for some added protection to make me feel a little better. I don't know how much I don't know how much faith I have in this jack. We now have two jacks. You can see my one jack up front here and the other one here. It just makes me feel better about this, guys, because if this comes loose, look, that spring's gonna pop out. Sometimes it pops out on the bottom, sometimes it bows out, but it can really hurt you, so be careful. So we need to get this guy on. So we got some protection here. So I'm gonna go ahead, thread it up into place, if possible. The problem is my jack is kind of in the way, but there we go. We'll get it started. And then we need to press this one down. You may have to have somebody come out and help you. And get the nut on that, and then we can remove our jacks until we're ready to re-torque those bottom A-arms. Now I'm gonna try to use what came in the kit here. It's a tight fit. It's way up in there. I'm gonna have to get something to fit on this, probably a cheapie to get the room I need, because it's actually quite a ways up in there. And if I had more, you know, if I had help out here, I could probably push it down a little further and get where I needed to be, but I don't. Yeah, I'm gonna have to, I'm just gonna have to get a small ratchet, or a small socket, so I can get that started and then we'll go from there. So I was able to reach up in there and get it started. So now I'm gonna go ahead and snug these down. We could technically go ahead and torque them. I think the top, let's see here, got it written down. 37 on the top one and 92 on the bottom. So let's go ahead and snug those. Go ahead and torque those down. 92 down here and 37 up top. Ahead and lifted all of this assembly with the jack. Like I said, 92 on the bottom, 37 up top here. I went ahead and retorqued the bottom A-arm. And so now I'm gonna go ahead and just loosely spin this on. I'm gonna leave this, oh, maybe not. I'm gonna leave this loose, the tie rod, because we're gonna have to do some adjusting to make these wheels set right. So I'm gonna leave that jam nut that I just dropped loose, and I'll probably go ahead and hook this up and torque it to 44 foot-pounds. Once we have our tie rod in there, we need to go ahead, torque it down, like I said, to 44, and put our cotter key in. Now, the two nuts that I used for the upper and lowers, the replacement A-arms came with cotter keys, but because there are lock nuts that come with the spindle, you don't have to use that. And I don't even think we got far enough down where we could use them anyway. So let's go ahead and torque this down to 44 and get that cotter key in. And then we'll probably, I think I might be able to sneak the shock in even with the jack there. Now we're ready to put the shock in, and I went with the same thing as I did in the back. So we've got the Beltec Street Performance. We're gonna use our factory 15s for the bottom, but on the top, okay, so if you look at this, there's two different sizes. So there's a bigger and a smaller. Depending on your vehicle, that's what size you need to use. So we need the bigger one. Chances are if you're working on one of these trucks, you need the bigger one. So it comes with the two smaller ones pressed together. We need to alternate that so the bigger ones are smashing together. And then it does come with a nut and then a jam nut for the top. Let's see if we can sneak this thing up in here. I'm hoping with the jack in place I can get it in here. I think I can. I was hoping. Ooh. Yeah, okay. So we need to put bushing on top with the big end facing down. And then this washer on top. And then the nut obviously on top of it, and then there's a jam nut. So generally how I tighten these down, guys, is I start to, as far as torquing them, you can't really torque these. I start to get it to where the gasket or that rubber material smashes out to the same size as the washer that you've got on top of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the 15s in the bottom, and then we'll start tightening down the top. Hopefully I can get these in with this. Yeah, we can get them in. And we'll come back, we'll talk about torque specs for the bottom. I don't remember offhand, and my jack is right in the way for that one. Oh, maybe not. Now I've got that jam nut tightened up top. I took the jack out, so it's gonna compress a little more than, I like to tighten that top up while the suspension is compressed. And I generally like to do the same on the bottom, but obviously our jack was in the way. So the bottom goes to 18 foot-pounds. Like I said, the top, when it gets pressure on it, it's gonna squish out more than it should. So you just make sure that, like I said, you have the suspension loaded when you tighten the top one. Once it gets as big as the ring on top, then you're good. Just know that, like, if you see it now, it's all squished down and looks like I've went too far, but that's normal. So at this point, I think I'm gonna go grab our hub assembly and get it in place. I wanna paint my brakes, so I think I'm gonna paint that with that same stuff I use in the back, that, I don't know, that POR 15 caliper paint. So I may pause, paint some of that stuff. Of course, you guys it won't be a pause to you, but clean this up. Getting all dusty. I may go ahead and grab, like the brake line brackets and stuff, and get them in place. I will tell you guys, if you're pushing the old keeper, so like this side holds the brake line, but the other side has that little plastic keeper. If you use a punch to push it out of the other one, don't just try to pull it out, you'll snap it off. But if you use a punch and push from the other side, because it goes all the way through, you'll be able to get it out. So I'm gonna go separate that stuff, and maybe we can get that in place next. So this thing put up a fight, but we got it. So now we need to take 2 of our stock bolts, put it down here at the bottom, and then we need to sandwich this thing in here if we can. Should be able to. Oh, that's not right. This is the way it needs to go. I don't know, guys. It's you know, this brake, as I told you, had been worn out before. This bearing doesn't make any noise, so I'm not gonna replace it, but man, it looks like crap. I probably should take some time to clean it, but I'm not going to. All right, so here's what we need to do. We need to tighten these up. We can actually, well, we can't hook that up yet because of the brake line. Well, we need to tighten these up to 133 foot-pounds. So I'm gonna swing this over. Well, I'm gonna try to swing this over and tighten those up. And then the top one, the kit comes with a nut that fits on that. And so kind of the way this goes, guys, is you need to tighten the back, or the bottom 2, and then tighten the top one. And you kind of got to go back and forth because you want to kind of drag it on evenly. Now this top one, they say torques to 75 foot-pounds, I believe. And you're gonna have to use a crow's foot to do that.